Welcome to another episode of the Ear Hustler Podcast, where everybody has a story and God gets the glory. Today we have our special guest, none other than Mrs. Michelle Mickens. How are you doing this afternoon, Ms. Mickens?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. So, where are you originally from, Ms. Mickens?
I am originally from Chicago, and I moved here. I've now lived more than half my life here. I moved here in 1996, and I've lived here ever since.
Okay. How many kids do you have, Ms. Mickens?
6 altogether. We have 5 boys and 1 girl.
Okay.
Yep.
And your husband is originally from Washington, correct?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Okay. And I know you have some kids like me that are mixed, correct?
I do.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced any difference, like as far as treatment from other people here in this town by that? Like by having mixed kids?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I had a situation one time where a teacher who doesn't work here anymore, it's been some years, had made a comment to her class how she felt sorry for my son because he was going to be so confused being raised in a family with a white parent and a black parent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see the confusion. I can just see you just having the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and he does. I think he would say the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, when did you first want to become an educator? Like, how old were you when you said, hey, I want to be a teacher?
I was probably 3 or 4 years old.
Oh, really?
I was the oldest child, and I can vividly remember, my parents can tell stories of how my 4 siblings and cousins and neighborhood friends would have to sit, and I would be the teacher, and they had to be the students, and then we'd play school. I've never wanted to do anything else. I've always wanted to teach.
Were either of your parents or any other family members ever teachers?
No, my daughter is a teacher now, though.
Okay.
Yeah, so we started the tradition, I guess.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long have you been teaching now?
21 years.
21 years. And what grade did you begin teaching? What was like the first grade that you ever taught?
It was 10th grade.
10th grade?
And then it slowly moved to 11th. And then it slowly moved to 12th. And then, like in most jobs, when you are really good at something, they trust you to do the harder work. And so I created a curriculum for 9th and 10th graders that were like less practiced, didn't really enjoy school, maybe just didn't have good experiences. And I created a curriculum, and that went so good in 9th grade that we looped those kids to 10th grade. So then I'd have them for 9th and 10th. And it was probably the best experience of my life. It's what really molded me to who I am today.
So you started in high school and have been there ever since?
Yep.
Okay. So I know a little bit about, I guess, how the teaching goes. So I guess for each degree you have, that means more money?
It does.
Per se? Okay.
In Georgia. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have your bachelor's degree, obviously, and you start at the base salary, which is set by the state. Depending on where you teach, your local district will provide a supplement. So your starting salary might be, I think it's about $39,000 and some dollars. But if you go teach in, say, Columbia County, you're really starting at like 48, 49, because their supplement is like 10,000, close to it. So if I'm not mistaken. And but we all start with the same base, and depending on where you work, you get that extra supplement. And then, of course, a master's degree, I want to say you get about $7,200 more a year. And then the same goes to a specialist, which is what I have. It's like the doctorate without the dissertation. And then you have the doctorate degree. So that's another, you can make that's the one good thing about Georgia. You can make a significant amount of money with those extra degrees.
Okay. Speaking of the money, I hear a lot of teachers have complained, like sometimes I guess the state funding and stuff may not be as available or accessible are easily accessible as they would like it, and sometimes they have to spend a lot of money out of their pocket to keep the classroom going. Do you ever encounter that? Do you have to spend like some of your money to keep your...
I do. I've been very fortunate in Wilkes and even in Oglethorpe. I've been really blessed to get what I ask for. But oftentimes, once you spend that budget, you don't realize you need more things later. And so those funds are no longer there. You used them already. So in that case, I've gone into pocket. But, I will say now that I'm working in policy, I'm learning a lot. And that one of those things is, the budget for Georgia, education takes up the largest part of the budget. It's 53% of the budget. And it's not so much that there's no money there. It's the QBE formula needs to be fully funded, and we have to update it. So it hasn't been updated, I think, since 85 or 86. And what happens is, look how technology's changed. We have a bigger school population. Transportation wasn't included in that. So thankfully, and teachers are going to get another $2,500 raise, I believe. I think that's going to pass through this session. So things are looking better. They've already increased funding for transportation for our bus drivers because our local districts, that comes out of their pocket, so much of it. So I think, if people are patient enough, they're going to see things get a little bit better. Ever since the pandemic, we know the focus is on education. And so people are paying closer attention, and that includes our legislators. Even if they don't want to do it, they know that it could cost them an election if they don't start investing back into education.
Okay. So people begin their teaching career, and I guess it may depend from individual to individual, but in general, what is the most highest goal or achievement? Like, for instance, someone may start as a teacher today and maybe I want to end up being a principal or administrator. Do you think a lot of people seek those positions, or they just kind of fall into them, or like I said, what is the highest goal set for an educator?
So I guess it depends on the individual person. Okay. I would say, unfortunately, in so many cases, there is, I guess, a type of grooming for that position. And, that's fine too. I have never met a teacher, though, in any of my years who said, I can't wait to become a principal or an assistant principal. I think, unfortunately, because teacher salaries are so low, that's the one way that you can earn money. And what we earn each year depends on our retirement. So there are people who want to retire in a healthy way, in a healthy fashion financially. And so what they do is they go into those higher positions. For me, I've never had the desire to be in administrative leadership. And I think the whole Teacher of the Year stuff was probably my greatest achievement. I couldn't have dreamed for anything more. And so I think I achieved my dream that year. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of think the same, where much is given, much is required.
Yes.
And once you reach it to the top, there's probably not any coming back down. It's probably you be out of the door. So at least you...
Yeah, and it almost ties your hands. Your hands are really tied when you're in those positions. By me still being a teacher, I am allowed to do so many other things. I'm a teacher policy fellow for the DOE. I'm now working on the national level with the National Network of State Teachers of the Year, where I am working to pass bills that are, self-affirming for students, and to fight bills that are inequitable for students. And so I get to use my voice to do that. If I were a principal or an assistant principal, I would not have those liberties. Do you know what I mean? I would not be able to do that so much. So I think things happened the way they were supposed to happen, and I couldn't be happier.
So you began your teaching career here in Wilkes County?
I did. Okay. Yeah. Andrew Jackson hired me.
Okay.
One of the greatest principals of all time. And I've come full circle because my principal now in Oglethorpe reminds me so much of him. And so it's just like everything's come full circle.
So you're now in Oglethorpe?
I am.
Would you return here?
I don't know. I think change is good, and I feel like everybody should go somewhere, even if it means they go back. But for my husband and I, all of our kids are older now. Julian's the last one. He's got 1 year left. And I see that as a step in a different direction.
Elevation.
Yeah. So we've talked about moving. We've even looked at some things like in the next year or two. So I don't think I would.
Okay.
But, I think it's always good for somebody to leave and come back so you can see what things are like elsewhere.
Let's go back to the Teacher of the Year. Did you receive that here in Washington?
I did. I was the runner-up for the State Teacher of the Year. Yeah, I was one of the finalists, and then I found out I was runner-up.
So let me make sure I got that good understanding.
So I was a district teacher. I won Wilkes County.
Right, and then you were nominated, I guess, for the State Teacher.
Yes, so you have to write, so many essays. It's part of an application package. In Wilkes County, they even give you a professional day off, which I came here to the library to write your essays because it's it's so long. And you write these essays, and then a board of judges comprised of various people pick 10 of the top. They use a rubric. I am actually a judge now, so I know how that rubric works. But yeah, and then they decide on 10 finalists, and you go one step further and you have to prepare a speech, and then you go through this interview process, and that too has a rubric, and then you pick your winner and your runner-up, and I was the runner-up.
Well, writing essays should have been easy part for you because some of your Facebook posts are essays. Now, for real, you always keep me straight on Facebook. If I post something, I'll always be looking for you to come in and comment. Because I said, if Ms. Mickens agrees with me, I know I must be right. And if I'm not right, she will let me know because.
Well, I think too, when your heart's in a good place, you just gotta acknowledge that too.
Because I know that you are very intelligent,
thank you,
eloquent, and such a superb vocabulary. Sometimes I read your posts and comments. I have to Google and see what the word means. That's you increase my vocabulary. You be teaching me outside of school.
Well, I hope that works for the kids in my classroom. That's all I can say.
If you ever get tired of teaching, I'm sure you can make millions doing something else with your intellect.
Thank you. That's a great compliment.
You're welcome. And sometimes we can see ourselves as something, but other people always view us differently. And sometimes even on social media, I see people post about like, who was your favorite teacher, or, what teacher made a big impact on your life? And, of course, you weren't teaching when I was in school, but I see a lot of the younger generation, they always mention your name and speak how great of a teacher you were. So I'm sure if it was up to a lot of your former students, you probably would have been Teacher of the Year years ago, and probably numerous times. So I do see that a lot of your former students think highly of you.
And that makes me happy.
That says a lot.
That's success right there. That was the hardest part about leaving, to be honest. I just worried about the kids. I enjoy the kids so much. We have good kids here in Wilkes County. In spite of what you hear or see on Facebook or none of that matters. They're good kids.
I had a teacher once told me that you should teach not because of the money, but because you love to do it, because there's really not much money. And I always said that I believe two groups of people should receive significant increase in pay, and those are law enforcement officers and educators, because you all definitely have a hard job.
Yeah, and it gets harder every year. I could promise you that. It doesn't get any easier.
Let me ask you something. How important do you think parent involvement is? Like parent to teacher involvement?
So I actually have a very unpopular opinion about that. I think parent involvement is important, but I also think that we are putting the world has changed. When people my age or older talk about parent engagement, we reflect on how it was when we were younger, when we had a mom who stayed home, or we had only the dad went out to work. And now we have a lot of kids who are kind of raising themselves, not because the parents don't want to take care of them, but because they have to work. And some of them are working more than one job. And I think that I'm not a fan of parent blaming at all. I don't think we should ever blame parents. But I do wish that parents would let their kids come to school and kind of, my hope, it sounds kind of crazy, is that there should be like less parent involvement. I think parents don't understand the educational process enough to engage. If they were more educated about the systems in place, then it would make more sense. Not so much anymore, though. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I think parents should be involved, but I think they shouldn't be over involved. We have all these parent nights now and stuff. We have grandparents nights, we have the game nights. And, the fact of the matter is, it's not only exhausting if you're a parent who works full time or a teacher who's already been to work all day. I think that it's inequitable. We just have students that may not have grandparents or, are in foster care. And so they don't have their dad and mom to bring with them. I just think we're overdoing it. School needs to go back to the way it used to be, where kids come and learn. And we have to trust our kids to grow up in an environment that maybe you just have a teacher who's not nice and they learn. They're not always going to have a nice boss,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're just like we talk about helicopter parents, but I feel like everybody's helicoptering. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's just, and unfortunately we blame the kids then when they act out, when really they have no freedoms at all. There's no consequences. They don't know what failure is, so they can learn from it. So I don't know. It's a tricky question for me, but that's kind of where I stand on that.
Another thing, bullying. Fact or myth?
Oh, no, total fact. Absolutely. Yeah. Who would think it was a myth?
Well, some people, I've heard different opinion, like, they think it doesn't exist, but by you being in the school system almost 3 decades, I'm sure you...
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's definitely real.
Oh, it's absolutely real. And I think, too, that when someone says they're bullied, we don't get to tell them they weren't. Perception is reality to that person. And so we want to make sure that whoever's causing that discomfort in another human being, that needs to be addressed.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical.
No. Oh, absolutely not. No.
I know you have been in the high school teaching all of your career. But what age do you think is the most pivotal as far as kids? Like some people say, well, by the time they get to high school, it's too late to try to turn them around. Just from all your knowledge and experience, what age do you think is a critical age to try to instill stuff into children?
Well, we talk about age a lot, and I don't think it has to do with age. I think it has to do with maturity. We have kids going through puberty at a very early age right now. So when we see a lot of events happening in our elementary schools, those kids are already going through a stage in life. Kids my age didn't go through till like 8th grade or high school age. We didn't have fights in middle school you weren't going through all of those hormonal changes. So I would say the earlier, the better. But I really think it relies on how we discipline. You'll see people on Facebook talk about we need to bring back the paddle. No, we don't. We need to just understand that they're children, and no matter how mature they are physically, that they are mentally that age or emotionally that age. And that's how we need to address it. Everything is so, punishment is so punitive now, and they're kids. They need to be talked to. It needs to be addressed in a way that they, I'll just say in my experience, when you treat kids with respect and dignity, you can take the kid who's the worst behaved and they'll behave for you.
So do you believe it's better to try to help and correct the child rather than punish them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Punishment never worked for me. As a kid, I just learned how not to get caught, Punishment does it. It makes kids angry and it makes them resentful and oftentimes retaliatory. So no, punishment doesn't do anything if there's nothing that you can't talk to them about or they can't learn from,
And that kind of translate over into the real world too, like
yes,
the law enforcement, court system too.
Yes, absolutely. Imagine a police officer pulling up to a fight and saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, break it up," and stepping in between them instead of screaming expletives and physically assaulting them or whatever it is, pulling a gun. Like, people are so much easier to talk to than we give them credit for. That's all most people want, is to be treated with dignity,
So in the high school, being so close to being an adult, do you see a lot of issues with mental? Have you in your career seen a lot of issues with mental health among students?
Yes. Here in this community, I wouldn't have said this had you not asked. It's one of the reasons I left. It took a toll on my mental health. The things happening in this community now, and the kids, the trauma that has never been addressed by the incidents that started during COVID. I would argue they started sooner, but that's when they really escalated. Yeah. And it was never addressed. We never talked about it. It was, the best thing to do is to come to school and have a normal day, even though it wasn't normal anymore. And so, we came back to school that year with less kids, and it wasn't because they went somewhere else. And it created so much, it's hard to talk about. But yeah, it's serious mental health issues. Yes.
Well, that may be part of the answer to my next question. I've read a lot that there have been like a lack of teachers, lack of educators. Why do you think there's such a shortage of teachers right now?
I would argue that the two things are, the three things. I was actually on the teacher burnout committee for the state of Georgia. We wrote a paper. The top three things are, expectations, the workload. One of those other things was student behavior. But again, the student behavior is a result of other things. If we can fix that, then we won't have to deal with that student behavior. We need mental health help. A lot of good things came from the report. We now have an EAP across the state, so teachers and their families can get free mental health services, help with, elderly assistance for parents and stuff, free legal advice. So the state has listened. We're starting a new teacher evaluation system. We're moving away from TEKS and going to Georgia Leads. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people haven't read the report, but the people in charge have. And we're fixing those things. But I think mental health is going to have to be the number one thing. We're going to have to change the way we discipline, plain and simple. It's not working the old-fashioned way. And of course it wouldn't, because I think that's come to a head too. People will argue, but I don't think that's really ever worked for any kid to be humiliated or hurt. And so
the military has recruiters. So are you a teacher recruiter?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a teacher recruiter. My daughter almost gave up her senior year of college because of EdTPA. And I heard from the top, a little secret, a little birdie told me, we're getting rid of it. It was during COVID. They said, we're getting rid of it. She's not going to have to do it. And I said, Megan, just stick it out.
What does your daughter teach at?
She's in Hall County. She teaches at Flowery Branch Elementary School.
Oh, okay.
She's a third grade teacher.
Okay.
And she is phenomenal. She's an
Okay.
outstanding teacher.
Yeah, but I've always read and been taught that your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. And truly, I can see that teaching is a gift that you have. And I also saw recently that you visited the state capitol.
I did.
So tell me a little bit about that experience.
Well, it's interesting because you learn when you're in policy that you don't talk too much about politics, as ironic as that sounds. And so you go in and the best workers, the people who get the most done, and I feel like I got a lot done that day, is reaching out to everyone. And I had the pleasure of meeting and sitting for a good time with Representative Glaze. She's wonderful. Representative Townsend, I didn't get to talk to. We had a meeting to talk, but his committee meeting went over. He's a former teacher, and I got to see him ask questions. And although he sits on the Republican side of the aisle, he asked wonderful questions. He said things that you could tell only a teacher would know to ask. And he actually called me back while I was shopping in Aldi. So you have people from both sides of the aisle. And if you really want to make things work and make change, I have learned, and you've probably seen in my Facebook posts, I've calmed down a bit as far as politics go, simply because you don't get anywhere fighting. I just learned that from the Capitol. I'm going to Washington, D.C. in April, and I have the opportunity to do the same thing and talk to all people. I think we just get more done that way. And I got a lot of help on my policy that I want to put through. Hopefully, Representative Glaze said she'd look at it and she's willing to adopt it.
Are you able to give any specifics about your policy?
Sure. It has to do with teacher burnout. I want new teachers, since we lose most teachers before 5 years, in the first 5 years of teaching. I want to make it so that induction teachers, years 0 through 3, will not have to have any extra duties like lunch duty, bus duty, door duty, whatever duties teachers have, hallway monitoring duty for those first 3 years, so they could focus solely on understanding how the systems of education function, learn about what an RTI is, MTSS, just intensive professional learning, so that they can, participate on their school teams and come in knowledgeable with an understanding and feel like they're a part of things. And I think if we're going to put that on there, we have a new literacy program coming through. Especially these primary and elementary teachers are going to be so overwhelmed. It's an entirely new literacy program coming down from the state, and they have to all be trained. That's another added responsibility. So I think it's the perfect time to take those extra duties off. And I think our teachers who are experienced will be glad to pick that up for them, while they just take a couple of years to get in the profession. It only helps us as seasoned educators to have good young educators come through. So I'm very excited. It's very simple. It doesn't cost anything. So I'm excited. I think it's something, especially aligned with everything we've been doing the last couple of years. I think it would be a great policy. And I think it's going to be easy for somebody to pick up and, on a bipartisan level too. A few of the reps I talked to felt like this was something that they can get bipartisan sponsorship on. So I'm very excited about it. We'll see.
How many years do you have to put in before you can retire?
So you have to put in 30, but I will age out, which sounds so sad, but it's okay. It means I will turn 60 before my 30 years. So I will be able to retire in 6 years. I probably won't, but...
Are you going to hang around and make the 30?
I'll make the 30.
Okay.
Oh, I totally got it in me. Most teachers leave because of the kids. I stay because of the kids.
Oh, okay.
So I totally have it in me. I'm very lucky over at Oglethorpe. I was so worried. I was most worried about the kids because I was so spoiled with the kids here in Wilkes County, having such good kids, but it's the same. And maybe kids are like that everywhere, and I just see something in them other people don't. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I have great kids in Oglethorpe too. So.
Okay. Well, yes, Ms. Mickens, congratulations on all your much success.
Thank you.
Continue to wish you the best throughout your education career.
Thank you.
And I hope that you continue to impact every young person's life that you encounter.
Me too.
So that years from now, you'll have many other people on Facebook that have, or Instagram or whatever platform that's ever been in Miss Mickens' class can say that you were their favorite teacher.
Well, I hope so. I sure hope so. That's what I aspire to do. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, thank you for coming out, sitting down with me today.
Sure. I enjoyed it.